1. My grandma's house has always been a little strange. It's one of those buildings where, although it appears homely and a nice place to be, there's just something really wrong as soon as you step in there. It's like a kind of feeling difficult to explain. Kind of like the atmosphere is really thick and heavy. Anyway, my grandma has lived in this house for a long time, and her mother lived in the house before that. So my grandma was actually born in this house and still lives there now, but even she sometimes gets scared. My family, including myself, have all had experiences. First, I will begin with my dad's experiences since he lived there. His room was really small and had no windows, as it was right within the middle of the house. While he lived there, he used to have a recurring nightmare about this man stood in the dark waiting for him. Then one night, he woke up and the man was actually there. He didn't dare move and just pretended to be asleep, so he has no idea when or if it disappeared. He had various other experiences too, but that's the most significant. Now my experiences. One experience I had, I was sat in one of her 2 living rooms with everyone who was at the house. I'm not really into speaking with a lot of people, so I just kind of sat letting my gaze wander off. Then I saw the shadow of someone in the other room, and thinking it was someone there, I called out to them, but it moved away and we looked, and there was nobody there. I have to admit, that one is very easily explained due to how many ornaments and furniture my grandma has that could have caused the trick of the light. The next one, however, was much scarier. To get to the bathroom in my grandma's house, you have to walk through one living room, through the kitchen, which is set out like a big corridor, through a hallway which has a door to the basement stairs, note, this is always kept locked, and then you reach the bathroom door. I had just been to the bathroom and was about to walk back, and when I was halfway through the kitchen I heard a door creak open, and looked back, and it was the door to the basement stairs. Now this door is always kept locked, so you can imagine how surprised I was to see such a heavy wooden door that had previously been locked, as far as I was aware, swing open. There was no wind or anything, as all the windows were closed, and even if it was open, it was a really old and heavy door, and took a hell of a lot to force it open. I went back and shut the door, trying not to look down the stairs, and left because I didn't want my grandma to think I was snooping around her house or anything. My grandparents themselves have also had experiences there. One experience was how she has some little metal bells in a cabinet in one of her living rooms. One day they were both in the other living room, when they heard the bells ringing in the other room. They went through thinking that a family member had arrived and was just joking with them or something, but there was nobody there and the bells were out of the cabinet and on the table. I strongly believe that these experiences are linked with one thing, a Ouija board. When my grandma was younger and lived, like I said, in the same house, she was playing with a Ouija board with her 6 sisters in the basement. That is as much of the story as I could actually get out of her because she told us she was too scared of what happened to tell us the rest, and will refuse to tell us always. I strongly believe that whatever happened was so bad and so scary that I will never find out. Maybe I don't want to. 2. I'm in my late 50s, so I've driven for a long time, both a private car and about 3 years as an interstate truck driver. At least 15 to 20 times in the day, I have seen various people in normal clothing, sometimes winter clothing, sometimes not, standing on the side of the road or highway. They would be staring at me with what looks like the most horrifying and freakish masks on. Now, I am familiar with Halloween masks, and I know the types. Some are Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, some are this or that, but the faces I saw were far more horrible, distorted, disturbing. None of them were hitchhiking. None were waving. They were just standing on the road, on my side of the road, sometimes with their hands in their pockets looking at me. Absolutely horrifyingly freakish faces, like the worst freaks you can imagine. I don't know what to make of it. No, I never stopped or went back to check. It is a bit scary. Not long ago, about 6 months ago, I was living in Salem, Oregon. There's quite a bit of homelessness in Salem, the capital of Oregon, about 100,000 people or so. Many more homeless than one would expect for a city this size. The metro area is not very large. Portland is about 45 minutes away and is a metro area of about 1 million. However, Salem is a tenth of that. Yet the homeless population is huge. They are everywhere. You can't walk into a 7-Eleven or Walmart or a gas station without confronting at least one of them, asking for help. Some just ask for spare change. Others ask you to put them up in a motel for a month or two. The state prison is here, the main one. Many inmates are addicts and mentally ill. They used to send the mentally ill to the state mental hospitals. However, most of those are now closed. Now they just release them out on the street and say good luck. If you don't have friends or family coming to get you and take care of you, and you are mentally ill, you're out of luck. Anyway, every day I used to drive to this taco place because I really like their tacos. It was about 5 miles away from where I lived, but I loved their tacos, so I drove. This was during the day. I would drive past this woman who sat on a small 3-foot red brick fence next to a house on the street corner. She looked homeless. She had super white skin and super black hair, looked about 35 maybe. She had an old suitcase next to her. Every day I would drive by her and look at her and think, who is she waiting for? Why haven't they come get her yet? I felt an urge to stop and help her, maybe give her enough to stay in a cheap motel for a night. No, not to have sex with her. I'm pretty poor myself and can't afford to adopt a homeless person and care for them for the rest of their lives. Most business owners could, but none do. I once bought a homeless woman 1 month in a motel room because she was crying and told me she had no place to go and was hungry, cold, etc. So I spent a fortune. Cheap motels are no longer cheap but expensive, and bought her a room for a month, and food for a month. Cost a huge amount, but after 1 month they kicked her out, and I could not afford to pay a second month. I had hoped she would get a job in that 1 month, but she never did. She just got high. Things are only getting worse in the US in this regard. Addicts don't see the long picture, they can just see until their next high. Anyway, I was driving by this woman, perhaps for the 4th or 5th time during the day, on my way to the taco restaurant, and I looked right at her. She quickly looked at me and her eyes were red, and it seemed as if something in her jumped into me super fast. I could actually feel that happen. Quickly I said, in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, I command all evil spirits to leave my body and do not return. 3 times fast, and I felt it leave my body. I never saw the woman again. The woman sitting on the brick wall was not the woman I helped. I don't think the woman sitting on the brick wall was really a woman. The last time I saw a freak on the side of the road was several months ago. It, had his hands in his pocket facing me, staring. 3. Out of high school, I worked at a cute little shop that sold gift baskets, goodies, and all sorts of home decor. This was before Big Box Hobby Lobby, and at the time the store was one of the most popular places to go in town to get cute things for your house or great gifts for people. The store was actually located in one of the oldest houses in the area. All the stores around that were actually houses at one time, and it became this cute, quaint shopping area. For a long time after it started, none of the other workers discussed that the house or shop was haunted. I don't think they were purposely keeping it from me, it just didn't come up. The shop was 2 stories with a basement and attic as well. Does that make it 4? I don't know. We always stayed open till 7:30 p.m. during the week, and there was always 2 closers for safety. When closing up, the front doors were locked to prevent any customers from coming in. And you can believe we locked that shit up on the dot so we can clean up, balance the register, and get the heck out. There was a back door, but we kept that locked as well. Those are the only 2 ways in and out of the store. On the night something happened to my friend, Amanda and I were closing, front door was locked up, we're cleaning, doing our thing as normal. We're about ready to go and had walked through the shop top to bottom, turning off all the lights, and we're standing at the back door. Out of nowhere we hear the most evil laugh I have ever heard in my life. We both freaked out, grabbed each other, and did the most damn horror movie thing imaginable and ran to the basement. In my defense, that's where the phone was. We ran back upstairs, busted out the back door, and called the cops. We called the owners as well. They showed up and cleared the place, and were more than understanding, and indicated they get calls to old houses all the time. The owner's husband showed up, and he was clearly perturbed at us for having called the cops, and says we should have called him first, and that we're just a bunch of silly girls, basically. However, He then himself begins to proceed to tell a story about how when he was doing bookwork one evening in the basement, he heard voices upstairs. He went to investigate, thinking his wife and daughter had stopped by. He got upstairs and the voices stopped. So he went back downstairs and went back to work. He said he heard them again and went back upstairs, and this time the conversation continued while he was standing there, and he himself skedaddled out of there. He never did tell us what he overheard specifically. Obviously the story got out amongst the staff about our experience, and people started talking about theirs. Someone told us they saw jelly jars fly right off the shelf. Another co-worker told us she would be balancing the register, and she would hear furniture upstairs drag back and forth when the shop was totally empty of customers, and her closing partner was in the back cleaning up. One of the managers told us that frequently when opening in the morning, she would go upstairs to turn on all the lights and would hear sounds of little girls playing in what would have been one of the house's bedrooms. The other owner, the wife, would get very upset if you referred to whatever was going on in the shop as a haunting or ghosts. She was a woman of great faith, and she would always say that they were her angels. I can honestly say nothing further ever happened to me when I was working there, but it was totally creepy afterwards, especially turning the lights off upstairs or going to the attic or basement. Follow-up to this story is here I am, almost 20 years later, and I live across the street from someone who now owns the building and has a different shop in it. The next time I catch her out, I'm going to try not to look crazy, and just ask her if she's ever experienced anything there. 4. So when I was young, my parents lived in a one-bedroom apartment. The three of us used to share the one bedroom. Me in the bunk bed, the other bed is on the ground. But then my parents' marriage started to fall apart, so Mom started sleeping in the living room. They lived in there from before I was born, so they know more than I do. But I remember things that I never told them about. For my parents, whenever they had guests over, people would always ask if they had a cat. But seeing as my dad is super allergic to cats, the answer was no. The funny thing was, each person that asked about the cat was always described as a different cat. The stranger thing was, everyone said it would do the same thing, meow though nothing can be heard, turn back, then disappear under the kitchen sink. Just before the time I was born, the cat stopped appearing. My dad says sometimes he heard singing while he was in the kitchen, but thought it could be the neighbors. It was always the same song though, but he couldn't understand the lyrics. Things that persisted. Things had a habit of disappearing. You could get something down, turn around for 2 seconds, turn back, and it would be gone. I used to chalk that up to my mom's hoarding. But even when we moved out, we still couldn't find some missing things. I don't remember what my parents lost, but when we moved out, I lost my Aladdin doll that completely disappeared. No matter where you were in the apartment, you could always hear someone else breathing, as if they were in the same room or right next to you. I remember when my dad started to work night shifts, and I had the bedroom all to myself. I could always hear someone else in the room, even when my mom wasn't there either. We all heard whispers, but we could never understand what was said. We always were asking each other if the other had said something, but no one did. Another thing that happened a lot was things that ran on batteries going off by themselves. I had a lot of toys that went off or did things by themselves. Things that I saw. I used to see shadow people and figures made from a strange blue light, but no one else could see them but me. I would always see the shadow figures by the mirror in the hallway outside of the bedroom, dancing or making strange movements. The ways I describe the shadow figures is like shadows or like smoke, while the blue figures is this. You know when you close your eyes for a few seconds and you see those white dots? The figures appear to be made of a blue version of those dots. They could be walking or looking in the mirror, or even sitting on the kitchen counter. I would see them everywhere, doing just about anything but interacting with us. I saw a woman once, just a full person right in front of me when I was 8 or 9 years old. I was doing my math homework after school and she just popped in. She appeared to be an older woman with grey silver hair up in a bun, wearing gold-framed glasses, a faded pinkish-grey gingham gown with tulips, and an apron. She wasn't facing me. She was facing the front door, and she looked furious, scolding someone with one finger raised. I saw her accusing finger move down, blinked in surprise, and she was gone. I don't remember a lot about what happened afterwards, but I remember it was so bizarre to me. I didn't understand what had just happened. The scariest thing that happened to me. So when my grandpa died, we got his inheritance and started planning on moving out. We still hadn't decided on a place yet, but we were only there for another 2 months. I was about 13 years old and my dad was still working night shifts. One night, I heard my dad come in, lay down in the bed, and get his CD player going. I even knew what song was playing, Wish I Had an Angel by Nightwish. Dad and I were super into that band around that time. Well, I was just listening along with the music, and all of a sudden the music stopped. I was really confused, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the CD player's batteries died. But then I heard the bed creak like someone was getting into my dad's bed. My dad started to threaten this thing by saying a whole bunch of really horrible things. I pushed most of them out of my memory, but 2 of the things he said really stuck with me. I'll rip your heart out and feed it to a fox. I'll use your blood to fill all the canteens in the army. I heard the creak go away, and I had a really hard time getting to sleep. When the morning came, I looked down and saw that the other bed was empty and no one was there. I went out to the living room and saw my parents were both still in the clothes they wore the day before. Turns out that Dad never went to bed that night. My parents had marathoned Simpsons all night in the living room. I have long since moved out of there, but I still have no explanations for some of the things that happened. 5. There's been a lot of mysterious things happening at my house, and I'm not sure what to make of it, so I've come here. Me, my girlfriend, who I'll call Haley, and a close friend of ours, who I'll call Liz, moved into a rental house together 5 months ago. The house was built in the 90s, and is in a small, quiet neighborhood. It was empty a year prior to us moving in, and has no bad history that we're aware of. Things started to happen from day one. Haley picked up the key from the rental company. After making copies, she brought them to the house to make sure they worked on all the doors. After the first one worked, she put it on the counter to get the next one. When she turned around, the first key was gone. We've looked for it high and low and never found it. Keep in mind, at this point, there's nothing in the house for it to get lost in. No boxes, no nothing. We never found the key. Later, Liz and I have moved some boxes in and decide to explore the attic one night. I go up and find some stuff left over from previous renters, such as holiday decorations, papers, etc. We also found this strange little decorative horse that we thought was cute, and brought it down from the attic, as our first house decoration. Haley saw it and said it looked like something from the Annabelle movie, so we started jokingly making it appear random places. We'd put it in each other's shower, up in the closet, whatever we could think of. Haley called it off eventually, saying it was getting a little too creepy, and that's when our stuff started to disappear. Nice sunglasses, an important book, various clothes, and medicine all have disappeared at this point, especially when we have needed them the most. As we noticed things started to go missing, I jokingly commented that we should ask the house to give them back, which Haley did one day when she needed her sunglasses. They appeared a few moments later in a very obvious place they could not have been previously. This has repeated itself multiple times, with things reappearing either seconds later or sometimes weeks later, but always when Haley asks. Nothing has ever been returned to me by asking. Liz had never had anything taken from her. Then the house started to talk to us. One day when I came home from work earlier than normal to attend a friend's graduation, I heard a female voice cheerily talking to my dog in her crate saying, "Oh hey." When I found my dog in her crate, she was sitting there quietly perked up as if she was getting petted. My dog also was out of her crate multiple times when all of us remember her being put in it by one of us. Or there was only one of us in the house. The way the crate is designed, and my dog being who she is, there is no chance she opened the crate herself. All 3 of us started to wake up at 3 a.m. to weird sounds and voices. Haley and I woke up to what sounded like someone tapping on the walls and moving things around several nights. Liz also corroborated hearing tapping sounds, and says she tried to locate them in the house but never could. Liz and I, in separate rooms, have also experienced voices talking. Liz has had an experience where she woke up to a bunch of people talking like a crowd. and then a single man's voice yelling. She also recently heard what she described as the sound of a plane crashing nearby. She told us she even jumped out of bed thinking it was truly happening. I also had a disturbing experience of hearing voices at 3 a.m. that I still don't truly understand. I woke up without explanation at 2:59 a.m., fully awake and alert. As the clock changed to 3 a.m., I heard the same female voice that had talked to my dog calmly say, "Are you ready? Let's begin." At which point, the best way I can describe it is I blacked out and immediately started a terrifying dream, where I was in my house and some type of dark spirit was trying to possess me. I am positive when I first heard the voice I was awake and not dreaming. I finally woke up screaming, crying and sweating, with Haley trying to console me. We also had a strange experience where the three of us were getting ready to go to bed after watching movies late one night, and heard loud banging on our doors, followed by lights being shined in our windows. We called the police, only to be told it was in fact the police at our house. When we talked to the officers, they explained they'd received a call from our house saying there was a teenage male prowling around. They were equally surprised to see that 3 females lived there, and when we explained we weren't even aware of any teenagers living in our area of the neighborhood, much less anyone prowling around, they checked with dispatch to confirm the address, and again dispatch came back with our exact address. After confirming we were the only ones living here and that we didn't call, everyone left confused. I'm not sure if this is related to the other stuff really, but I definitely thought it was odd and worth noting. The house is also given to us. One night, right before bed, I was checking my dog's food, noticing she'd eaten everything in her bowl. I asked Haley if she'd fed her and she said yes. She'd even given her the last of the food and she'd eaten it earlier today. I checked the tub we store her food in and it was completely empty. No food in the bowl or tub, so that means no food in the house. Haley planned to buy her food the next day when she came back from work. The next day I was sitting on the couch watching TV and suddenly hear my dog eating something. Like any decent dog owner, I go to investigate. I find my dog eating her normal dog food out of a full bowl. A bowl filled with food that isn't anywhere in the house. I checked the tub, no food, just like it had been the previous night. I texted Haley and Liz and asked, without telling them what I'd discovered, if they'd fed the dog. Both separately replied that they hadn't because there was no food in the house. I thanked the house for feeding the dog. I was clueless as to what else to do. We've never felt unsafe in the house. Although I'll admit I was very spooked by some of the things that happened at 3 a.m. I do wonder what the best course of action would be. To just leave things the way they are, or try to do something about it, etc. Curious to see everyone's thoughts and if anyone has had a similar experience. Please feel free to ask questions if there's anything you're curious about, or want clarified. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 125. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. You know, what is it with mobile phones these days? My current phone is getting to the end of its functional life, and so I've been browsing about looking at potential new phones, not quite ready to buy one yet. And I've come to the conclusion that pretty much everything on the market, at least certainly within my price range, does not meet my requirements. Some have some features alike, some don't, and they've all but a handful of them, I'll get to that in a sec, seem to have those annoying bloody notches on them, which I just don't like. It's a terrible idea. And the few that don't, the few that have actually smart enough to put a sliding mechanism for the rear camera, or the selfie camera rather, not the rear camera, that's fine. I don't actually, I've looked into the manufacturers and apparently the privacy policies are trash, so I suppose I'll wait till later in the year. There's new ones coming out. I've already looked at some of the new ones because the kind of like the prototype thing, some of them, the images have leaked of them, and I can already. I've currently got an Asus Zenfone 2, and I was looking at I looked at the 5Z, but no, it's got the notch and everything, which I don't like. So I thought, well, maybe the Zenfone 6 will be out soon, so maybe that will do. But leaked images of the Zenfone 6 make it look like they've added one of those stupid annoying notches, but it looks like they're going for the even more annoying thing of putting it over to the side. At least the other one looks sort of aesthetically acceptable, but even then it was... Anyway, that's enough grumbling about phones, so I'll probably wait till later in the year and hope something better comes out. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.